Hello everybody, I'm John Self, and welcome to Self Perspective, a weekly video blog with information and insight to help you manage your career. Today, selling your value, an essential skill for career brand management. This is part of a course I teach on interviewing skills. Instead of my usual talking head video today, I'm using Apple's Keynote program to share information that I think is important for your job search. But let me begin by introducing myself. I have had a great career. I've worked for daily newspapers across Texas. In Houston, I worked for the Post. I was a crime writer and investigative journalist. I joined Herman Hospital in 1976 as the Director of Public Relations. By the way, I was born in Herman. 3 months later, I was appointed to be the Director of Lifelight, an event that dramatically changed my career trajectory. I spent 3 years as the National Marketing Manager for the aircraft program, and I led the setup of the next 13 Lifelight programs from California to Pittsburgh. I recently finished an ebook. It is loaded with information on the executive search process. So even if you're not in the rural community hospital space or planning to lead a recruitment effort, I think it can help you as a candidate. There's a lot of great information there. I also am a frequent speaker on career management. I have a twice weekly blog, a Saturday video blog, and a weekly podcast. So let's get started and begin with an overview of some of the issues I want to discuss today. Here are some of the common mistakes candidates make. They fail to consider how intense the competition is. They just go to the market and do what they've always done, and that doesn't work so well anymore. They fail at being a helpful candidate. In a hyper-competitive environment, you need to be a helpful candidate. They also have a misguided interview strategy. They just show up and expect to answer questions, and that too is no longer a realistic strategy. Here are some other mistakes that candidates frequently make. There is a lack of focus in defining their value statement. Their resume doesn't connect to the employer's need. Candidates send the same resume to every job. Why would you do that? Inadequate preparation for various interviews. This is an issue that recruiters have been talking about for the last couple of years. And the lack of appropriate reference management, something that is also troubling for some candidates. So let's start with an important perspective. In the job market, the odds are overwhelmingly against you. Now, I'm not trying to be negative here, but the truth is, at the start of a search, recruiters or employers may have 50 to 60 candidates that, to some degree, meet the job specs. 40, 50, 60 to 1 is horrendous. So differentiation of your candidacy is absolutely essential. Not only do you have to do a better job telling your story than the 20 or so candidates that are initially screened, but you have to do it in a way that is helpful. That is to say, connecting the dots between your value and the needs of the client. That is why interviewing is not about showing up to answer questions. Your effectiveness as a candidate begins when you focus on your career brand. Some people call it the value proposition or your value statement. Regardless of what you call it, by zeroing in on this aspect, you can dramatically improve your ability to communicate your value. It is all about understanding your signature strengths. And I can tell quickly when I'm interviewing a candidate whether they understand their value proposition because their message is much more focused and they're much better prepared for the interviews. Now, this is a process that begins with writing down all the things at which you think you excel. And beside those things, you've got to provide relevant proof, quantifiable proof, hopefully, that those are in fact things you are good at. Then, after doing that, you narrow them down to the 4 or 5 things that reflect your best qualities. From there, you write the all-important career brand statement, the value proposition. Now, this is not a one-and-done exercise. You rewrite and rewrite until it is a powerful and compelling statement, the best one it could possibly be about who you are as a leader. please do not bypass this process. Now, once you have your statement, you are ready to take the next step, preparing your resume. I encourage my outplacement clients to prepare their resume themselves. I have seen some candidates who come to an interview with a professionally produced resume with only a vague awareness of what is in the document. Moreover, your value statement will underlie your resume, and at this point, no one will understand your value better than you do. Now, let's look at some of the most common issues with resumes. First of all, most resumes are generic. That's craziness. They're sending the same document to each prospective employer, and more often than not, that's a waste of time. Why? Because each employer has a unique set of needs, and your resume, at least in the professional summary, should speak specifically to what that employer is looking for. Remember, the search is not about you. You may think it is if you need to find work, but trust me, from the employer's point of view, it is all about them. They have a need. They have a problem. They need someone to solve it. Again, in a hyper-competitive job market, why do you want to be like everyone else? Remember, differentiation of your brand is really important. One of the problems we see today, and this is a common complaint from recruiters, and it was shown in a national survey, that most candidates show up unprepared for the interview. Now, there are 3 ways to prepare for the interviews. First, you research the prospective employer, and that means to look at your LinkedIn network, to talk to people who may know about the organization, and try to get some inside information. Secondly, you want to know who you're interviewing with, whether it's an internal recruiter or a search firm representative. There's always information on LinkedIn or other places, maybe the firm's website, where you can get biographical information about who you're interviewing with. If you can find out how they interview, that's even more helpful. Some people now are using behavior and values interviewing extensively, and if you're not prepared for that kind of interview, you will struggle. And then you want to be prepared with examples of your performance and successes. If you know what the company's looking for, if you understand their need, if you understand the problem, then you should have examples with metrics that show the employer or show the recruiter that you know how to fix that issue. Keep in mind, most candidates do a lousy job connecting with the employer. Now, in most industries, an out-of-work executive will get a serious shot at only about 4 or 5 opportunities in a 12-month cycle. This means you cannot afford to approach the job search with this "I've got this" mentality, thinking that you do not need any help, that you can do what you've always done when you were looking for a job. Well, the market has changed. Your background is important, as is your record of accomplishment. But if you are not selling those facts to your prospective employer, if you are not connecting the dots between your value and their needs, the odds are overwhelmingly that you will not succeed in the process. You know, there are 70% of the questions you will be asked in an interview you've probably heard before. So why not think about those and think about the answers you want to give? You should know which questions need factual responses and which questions need story responses. And being a good storyteller can help you become more memorable. So at the end of the interview, you want to have a good story to close the deal. The power of storytelling is amazing. Let me give you an example. Here's a question. Name the person and the event that significantly changed your life. Here's my answer. I was 3 months into my job as a director of public relations at Herman Hospital, and I was trying to figure things out. I guess you could say I still recognized a hospital only 2 out of 3 times. It was a far cry from my job as a crime writer and investigative journalist at the Houston Post. One day, I was walking down the hall outside of the administration, and I saw my boss in conversation with the chief of neonatology. Now, let me tell you, we had been looking at a helicopter ambulance program in Denver. Herman was trying to reestablish itself in the marketplace. It was a teaching hospital with a level 1 trauma center, but we were suffering from lack of use. And so Bill Smith, the CEO, had been thinking about implementing a program. I had been on the team, but that was several months prior, and I completely let it slip my mind. Well, as I said, I saw my boss in conversation with the chief of neonatology, who appeared to be fussing about a lack of funding and other resources. And then I heard him say, "And that damn helicopter program, why are you doing that now? You have no one to run it." And Bill Smith caught my eye as I passed and said, "John Self is going to run it, and he will sink with it or swim with it." Now, if I'd have had a paper sack when I turned the corner, I would have stopped to blow in it. That 10 seconds, that 10 short seconds changed the trajectory of my life and my career. Okay, don't you think that's not a memorable answer? I told a little story. I can probably tell it a lot shorter, but the fact is that will be an answer that most interviewers will remember. So remember this too. There are two kinds of answers to questions. First, fact-based answers. That is, what's your days in cash on hand? What's your net days in AR? Those types of factual-based questions. And then there are questions that beg for a story. And I just told the story, and that is how you become more memorable. Mastering this aspect of the interview process is almost a certain path to career brand differentiation. Now, here's another issue that comes up frequently in searches that I lead: ineffective reference management. And this is one of the most neglected parts of a candidate's efforts to find a new job. If you're a senior executive and you're going to go through 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 7 searches in a 12 to 14 month, 15 month process, you want to have more than just 4 references. We recommend you solicit 8 executives or more, superiors, peers, and subordinates. Now, this is important. You need to select people who can speak specifically to your various strengths and weaknesses, to your accomplishments. When a reference has to say, "Well, I can't answer that question because I wasn't exposed to that about this person," and they do that 2 or 3 times, that's no longer a good reference. That's a neutral reference, or in some cases, a bad reference. There's an old expression in the lawyering business: an attorney should never ask a question in court that he doesn't already know the answer to. This is sound advice for job applicants as well, yet the majority of candidates treat the referencing as an afterthought. You do that at your own peril. I have seen it too many times in my 22-year search career. You must be purposeful in this aspect of the job search, and if you do it the right way, this will make you a stronger candidate. Now, as we come to a close, let's look at another important perspective. Looking for a job is a full-time job. The job market has changed dramatically over the last 5 years. There is more competition for the top jobs, and employers are much more discerning in their consideration of candidates. They can afford to be. Your go-to-market strategy should be built on your value statement, as well as your commitment to differentiate yourself through your record of accomplishment and how you communicate this information to the employer. I hope this information has been helpful to you. If you have any questions about executive search or career transition strategies, you can reach me at careertransitions@johngself.com. And I also hope you've enjoyed this little video experiment today. Let me know what you're thinking. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you next time.